Hi there and welcome to the next section on club head design and fitting process. What we're going to talk about today is grooves. Okay, grooves is not necessarily something that I would think about fitting someone into, but it's all part of the club head design. It's all something that is considered when you're choosing an appropriate club, and I think it's one of these things you need to be aware of. So grooves can really vary from club to club, brand to brand, model to model, depending on the club head that you're talking about. And we're talking about irons here in this particular case, but if you're talking about an iron, you might actually have a different groove type in the iron than you would do in the wedges, because they're doing different jobs, they're encountering different lies in terms of the type of grass and the depth of grass, and therefore you want them to do different things. Okay, so it really does, like all these things, when you pay attention to the detail, all the things add up, even if you're changing one small thing during a custom fit. It might not make a massive difference in its own right, but when you add up all the different things that you're making specific to your game, it makes a big difference. Okay, so with regards to grooves, we're talking about the shape of the groove. Okay, so you could have a groove that's, there's the groove there going into the face. Then you might have a groove that is more of a box shape. You might have a groove that's more of a V shape. Okay, just two rough examples there of the sort of shapes that you can have, and it's the depth, the volume of the groove that can make the difference. It's also the sharpness of the groove. So if you've got a groove that's a bit of a V, and if this is the top of the, going up here, if this is the top of the face, then you've got a groove which is angled like this. Okay, as the ball makes contact with the face and goes up the face, if this groove, this top groove here is sharper, then it tends to grab and it tends to interact more with the ball cover and either create a lower launch angle or a higher spin or less. Okay, so if you had a top groove that was sort of like this, but then you had a top groove that was more this way, so it was more of an angle, like 20 degrees, 30 degrees, then the ball wouldn't grip as much into the top groove as it would do with the sharper one. Okay, so they're the sort of things that we're talking about. So when you have a fairway, a mid-iron, let's say a mid-iron, 4-iron, 5-iron, 6-iron, 7-iron, the grooves might be better orientated to not creating as much spin. They're more generated about trying to generate forward momentum and a penetrating ball flight. So a V groove with a top sort of a shallow angle in terms of the top groove might be better for more penetrating trajectory. As you get down towards like the 8-iron, 9-iron pitching wedge, then the grooves might become sharper. They also might become deeper, they might become more box shape, and to allow the cover of the golf ball to sink in a little bit more, create a little bit more bite, you know, in that instant of impact. And as you get towards the more lofted clubs, especially if you've got a soft cover golf ball, if the ball's coming in, if the club's coming into the ball here, the ball's actually trying to ride up the club face. Okay, if it's getting gripped by a top or a deep groove and a sharp groove, top sharp edge groove, it can't rise up, it can't bump and skid up the face quite as easily. Okay, so if you've got a very, aggressive groove, let's call it, what happens is the ball doesn't ride up as much, it stays on here, the face, for a little bit longer as it's making impact, and it'll take off rather than sort of climbing up and launching a bit higher with a bit less spin. What it does, it grips on for a fraction second longer, it comes off a little bit lower, and it spins higher. Okay, so that's what an aggressive groove can do. The other thing on the face, actually, especially as you get down towards the wedges, is the surface texture, the face texture in between the grooves. They can be milled. There's different sorts of roughness, which actually has a big impact on the amount of spin you might get, especially on your shorter shots. But yeah, this is a quick little overview of groove, and it is thought about in quite a lot of detail by the designers, by the brands, about what groove they should use, how much space they should have in between each groove, whether it's a smaller space or a larger space, how much roughness and texture and milling do they have on the face itself, and then the shape and the angles of the grooves and how sharp they might be. So yeah, it's another consideration. I don't really expect you to be thinking about it too much, especially with regards to your irons, but it has been thought about, and it does make a difference in terms of the ball flight. And like I say, especially as you come down towards the wedges, then you start to see differences in trajectories and spins that are much more noticeable and observable. So anyway, that's it. That's pretty much it in a nutshell with regards to groove. We'll talk about another section next week. I hope it's been useful, and we'll speak to you soon.